Okay, so let's talk about if they are unable to come to a deal and the Biden administration doesn't employ one of these workarounds, and we do, in fact, breach the debt ceiling, what is this going to look like? And the truth of the matter is nobody really knows, because even though we technically breached it before, there was a resolution quickly enough that we didn't get to some of the most dire scenarios. Although even in that scenario, this was back in 2011, we lost trillions of dollars in household wealth just from that brief breach of the debt ceiling. So it shows you there could be tremendous consequences here. Go ahead and put this up on the screen from the Washington Post. The headline here is 7 doomsday scenarios if the U.S. crashes through the debt ceiling. This was written up by Jeff Stein. Just at the top, they've got quotes from a few economists saying, Mark Zandi, a chief economist at Moody's, says it would be a lethal combination. You can see how this thing could really metastasize and take down the entire financial system, which would ultimately take out the economy. I've seen many other economists say this could be way worse than the 2008 financial crash if allowed to fester for a sufficient period of time. So going through the 7 scenarios here, number one, the first thing that would probably happen is stocks would crash. And you have estimates that stock prices could fall by roughly 1/5. That's from Moody's Analytics. You would have stocks plummeting on the expectation of a wider economic downturn. Interest rates would rise. Investors would pull funds out of the market to preserve their access to short-term cash. And, that piece, I think, is pretty clear that you would have a rather instantaneous stock crash. And, we did see Saagar previously when there was the coronavirus crash, which was so brief that people apparently forgot that it even happened. And by people, I mean elites who weren't paying that close of attention, because it galvanized forces in Washington to actually act. So it is possible if you had stocks fall off a cliff, then maybe people will get their act together at that point and get something done.
Yeah, looking at all of these, stocks crashing is obviously going to force that couldn't be everything. The sudden recession, federal workers in limbo, I'm not saying they don't matter, but I am saying I don't think a lot of people are going to care as much.
I don't want to just write that one off, because you are talking about U.S. military personnel. You're talking about air traffic controllers. Right. You're talking about food safety inspectors. Federal government is the largest employer in the whole country.
True.
So that's not a nothing to wave off. And of course, when you have the largest employer in the whole country basically not paying their workers, then that obviously feeds into much broader economic issues with regard to the instant recession.
The one that really hit me was the Social Security. So it was said that it's possible that we could reach a point where 60 million people who get monthly Social Security payments would not be getting some of their payments in addition to federal reimbursement for Medicare. I was like, that is one which actually would really change things. Now, some Republicans have said that the government actually can continue to make these payments, but some budget experts are skeptical that the Treasury Department will have the ability. The other thing is, cynically, if the Republicans are like, no, you can, and the Treasury Department's like, no, we can't, it's like, well, who has the authority to pay? The Treasury Department, right? So they may do it just to try and force the hand of somebody. Let's all be honest, nobody really knows how and what to do, because what happens is that the Treasury Department will still have incoming revenues. All of us will continue to pay taxes, business owners, we have to pay on a quarterly basis or whatever, so we'll pay our quarterly tax estimate. Well, they can use that money coming in because it's non-congressionally appropriated. So then they, though, have to go and decide what to spend it on. But that itself comes to a constitutional question of, you shouldn't be making decisions about what to spend and what not. So it is complicated.
Right. And then also, think about this choice that they would be making. Are you going to pay the debt holders over the seniors who need
Which is what Wall Street
Social
wants.
Security? Of course, that's what Wall Street wants, 100%. And, to make the other side of this, there are Republicans who say, oh, we've gone through, we prioritize how we'd make the payments. So, it wouldn't be as dire as what you're laying out. But again, this is all completely uncharted territory. And so there's a lot of skepticism that however many, it's billions of payments have to go on from the federal government, that do you really trust the federal government to be able to accurately prioritize those in a way that everybody's going to find acceptable? Very likely they would privilege Wall Street over veterans, seniors, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's a really important one. And this could be a global catastrophe. Why? Because more than half of the world's foreign currency reserves are held in U.S. dollars. Treasury bonds are used as collateral routinely because they're considered to be the safest possible financial instrument. Exactly. Sometimes they're considered safer than cash. This backstops as collateral. transactions, major corporate transactions all around the globe. And that's why, again, it's so hard to predict. Okay, when that stops being so certain and becomes instantly this risky asset, what does that do? What does it mean in terms of our status as still being the world's reserve currency? You already have countries that are trying to move in another direction from that. So huge and very frightening question marks about what that would all look like. And I always remember, what happened in the UK when you had that mini budget disastrously released by Liz Truss, and it had all of these follow-on catastrophic instant economic impacts that nobody really saw coming, because the global financial system is so intertwined and so complex that even the most intelligent and well-versed economists can't lay out what all of the follow-on effects are. So that's what makes this so frightening. You, of course, would have the dollar drop. You would have U.S. borrowing costs soar, which is the opposite of what you want if you're worried about the debt. That means the debt becomes even more expensive and we're even in a deeper hole. So that's why this is not something to play around with. This is not a game and it's not something to be casual about. There are potentially very dire and very serious consequences here, and they're playing with fire.
Let's go put the next one on there because it's important, actually, which is they say the consequences from Bloomberg of the debt ceiling are already here. And what they say is that this is even JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. The consequences could be catastrophic. One person that they quote, the former chief of staff at the Treasury Department, said, people get the joke that's going on in Washington. It's the strongest economy in the world, the most powerful nation. If it's not going to pay its debts when due, you've got to be kidding. And then what they point to is that this could cause global financial panic, as you said, Krystal. And that's why when you're messing with something which seems so ironclad in the global financial system, you really just have no idea what's going to happen. They point to the $50 trillion capital markets, debt and equity. Any hiccups in repo markets that could take those markets off course have hundreds of billions of dollars in implications, even a couple of percent, both ways. And the overnight lending through the banks and financial markets as primary collateral, he says there could be a huge contraction of credit and capital markets, liquidity that greases the skids of all of those markets, as well as a huge liquidity call. What's more, corporations with AAA ratings cannot be rated more safe than the country that they are hosted in, meaning that corporations themselves could face mandatory downgrades and higher borrowing costs. That's what I referenced earlier in our show. Whenever we had a downgrade in the way that we were, all of these things have automatic kick-ins for pensions and for higher borrowing costs. And if we have higher borrowing costs across not only as a government, but for our individual corporations, that bleeds into what they're able to do, what they're able to borrow money for. So yeah, it's just a real mess. All around.
I think that's the only way you could possibly sum it up. And let me just say again, look, I think Biden has made a catastrophic error here by agreeing to negotiate because I think the consequences of this are so dire. And I do want to be clear on like the 14th Amendment workaround or whatever. No one is saying that would be painless. It would be, there would be economic consequences to that as well, because Saagar, what you're pointing to, the uncertainty of how this would work out within the legal system and was this, debt really going to be honored in the way that our other debt, that is all really true. But we cannot keep having these hostage situations year after year after year. We have got to find a way to take this thing off the table because this is a potential catastrophic disaster for people in this country and people around the world in the making. And we need to not repeat the errors of the past is what I would say. So we will see how this all works out, if it does work out.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.